All right, I'm going to create a new series of videos that I'll do once in a while. I have Chip of the Day. We do that once in a while. I'm going to do a series called Guy Toys, okay? And so this is a great example of a guy toy. Yeah, you can get watches that tell time way better than this thing does, but this is a guy toy. People just like looking at them and putting them on their wrist, and they're just a joy because they're so damn complicated. This one has 43 jewels inside, and I think it cost me $700 to have it serviced last time. So just to keep them running cost you a fortune for these stupid things. Anyway, it's a guy toy. What we're going to talk about today is lenses. So we're going to start out with Carl Zeiss, a company that was in Germany. It ended up being in East Germany and occupied by the Russians, but it was a powerhouse in lens design, and the Zeiss company invented a whole bunch of lenses, and they put names on those lenses. And so this particular lens here is a Tessar, and a Tessar is a 4-element lens. It's 3 groups. So one of the groups has 2 pieces of glass glued together. And so it's 3 different pieces, but 4 pieces of glass. And I will show you that design a little bit later. But what I really wanted to talk about was the Zeiss company itself. At the end of World War II, the Zeiss company got split in half. Half went to the West and half went to the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union was already invested in copying Leica and Zeiss lenses and stuff. And they had their own set of lenses and had copied the Tessar lens even before they ended up getting half of Carl Zeiss. But the Tessar lens was very classic. It later became a little bit fancier, became a sonar lens. They added one more element. But it's a classic triplet with a achromat in the back end of it. Anyway, what I want to talk about is these wonderful objects from the 50s, or maybe even earlier than that, probably starting in the 30s, that there was just a wonderful design ethic where everything was made functional, but also a piece of art. All at the same time. So yeah, wonderful cameras came out of several places in the world, and we can enjoy them today. This is a Symbolica, kind of a rare camera, but it does have the Zeiss Tessar that I wanted to talk about today. So, Leica lenses, Zeiss lenses, they were expensive lenses, and when they became property of the Soviet Union, they made a lot of them kind of in the Cold War. And then when Glasnost came around and opened up, you could get Russian lenses super cheap and Russian cameras super cheap. I don't know what the prices of Russian stuff is these days, but I snatched it up when it was cheap. So yeah, let me show you a couple examples of that. So the Zeiss Tessar lens was so popular, everybody was going to make their own version of it. This is a version also built in Germany. This one has a contour mechanism for the focus and the aperture, but it is a lens made by Voigtlander. Voigtlander, let me take the lens shade off here. Voigtlander had a lens here called the Color Scopar, and it is a Tessar design. This one is 50 millimeter f2.8, and Voigtlander is a very famous company. It was in West Germany, so it stayed on the west side here. I don't know if you can read it there, it says West Germany down there. So it's a fairly vintage lens. Voigtlander still makes lenses today. When I was doing cell phone cameras, we had a mechanical engineer who actually came from Voigtlander. Yeah, so very, very nice. So one of the nice things about cameras these days, the micro four thirds format, is you can put any lens at all. It doesn't matter what lens you have. You can use it on a camera. The camera that I'm filming this with is a micro four thirds format. And even though I'm using the lenses that are actually made for this particular camera, I'm able to use these lenses as well. You can get adapters, right? So this adapter goes from the decal to micro four thirds, and it just will go on a Lumix camera, which is what I'm using, and it works just fine. So you can get these old lenses pretty cheap, get the adapters for next to nothing, you know, 15, 20 bucks, and away you go. And then I've put a nice a lens shade on it. This is a lens shade that was a kind of something you might see on a Leica camera, but you can just get Chinese copies of it now, super cheap. So make your lens, put bling on your lens, and something functional as a lens shade. I like these lens shades because you can see through them. They're really, really nice. Okay, so here's a example of a lens that was made as a copy of that Zeiss lens. And this is a nice guy toy all by itself. This is just a nice object. The machining on this thing is just first rate. Also has a really cool feature in it. Let's say you have it set to a focus at 5 feet. Interesting, it's in feet too, so this was marketed for the Western world. So 5 feet, and then if you change the aperture, you can see these little marks going back and forth, and that's your depth of field. So if you set it here, you know that you're in focus from 4 feet to 7 feet, and then you can read we're at f11 here. So yeah, it's a nice object, all right. But I talked about Russia kind of getting involved, so let's take a look at a Russian lens. All right, this is a Russian Industar 61, all right. And the marking is there. It's a N61. This copy was made in 1984, so they continued to make these quite late. I'm not sure if they're still building them. The Industar 61 is one of the sharpest lenses ever made in Russia, USSR, and it is a beast. It is wonderful. I think this particular lens is probably that has the best contrast of maybe any lens that I own. The color rendition, most people think of lenses it's either sharp or it's not sharp, but this has contrast, and the colors are just intense when you can take a picture with a really, really good contrasty lens, and this is a contrasty lens. If you are into photography, go over to Ken Rockwell's page and look up Industar 61. He just raves about these things. He says they're capable of producing any photo, could hang in any museum. But it has lanthanum glass in it, so it has rare earth glass. I paid 20 bucks for this thing, and I mean, if Leica sold this, it would be thousands of dollars, right? At least $1,000. It is just wonderful. It focuses from 1 meter to infinity, f2.8 to f16. Let's see here, yeah, 2.8 to f16. It has a nice feel to it. It's manually focused lens, but it has a nice feel to it. I have another one of those lens shades in it. There you go. All right. So, I want to show you one more camera, and then I want to show you a resource that I found as a optics person. Remember, I used to do optics for a long time, and I used to design lenses and things, and I was interested in all of the Zeiss lenses and all of the Japanese lenses, and then I found out there's a little bit to be discovered on Russian lenses, so I'll show you that document that I found. Okay, so the next camera I want to talk about, lens actually, but it's attached to a camera, so I'll just go ahead and introduce the camera as well, because it's a wonderful guy toy. is a Zorky 3 with a Jupiter 8 lens on it, right? And the Zorky is a copy of the Leica 3. I don't know if this is a 3D, 3... It's not a 3F. I forget what they are. 3C? This might be a 3C. Yeah, so let's show it here. This is just a wonderful guy toy. I used to have Leica equipment back in the day. I had a Leica M3 and several lenses and stuff. When autofocus came along, I sold my whole Leica setup and I bought a Nikon setup, what was real nice for autofocus. I mean, you know, there's only so much money to go around, and you got to sell your old toys to get new toys. But yeah, the Leicas were just phenomenal to use as a photographic tool. And this one feels just like a Leica. I mean, there's no difference. This feels like a Leica. It's built like a Leica. It feels like a Leica. It's a very nice camera. This came out of the Arsenal. I think that's what that little. There's the Kiev factory, the Arsenal factory, the maybe the Fed factory. I don't know. There's several factories in Russia, and they end up like the Kiev factory is in Ukraine now. So a lot of this optics stuff ended up in Ukraine. The Jupiter 8 lens, show you that. This is a Russian right here for Jupiter. Jupiter dash 8. A lot of their camera stuff was around space and stuff at the time. So Jupiter 8, f2.0. So this is really aimed at the Leica world because like a Sumatar lens, Sumar lens, f2 was like the sweet spot in the 50s, 60s for a Leica lens. 50 millimeter f2 is just kind of like the go-to lens. And this is a very complicated design. The Jupiter design is quite wild. Yeah, it's really nice. In order to change the shutter speed, you have to lift it up and take it over. There's an additional, oops, let's see here, let me wind it. There's an additional setting on the threes, or you put it here, and it's 1/25th to 1 second, and then you use this little dial up front. And so you can set this little dial to, this is 1/10 of a second. That's 1/10 of a second. This shutter sounds right. Let's go for 1 second and see how it sounds. Yeah, this shutter seems to be still spot on after all those years. My Minox lens was a bit slow, but yeah, this one seems to be pretty good. It has bulb and up to 1/1000th of a second. Yeah, this is a real workhorse camera. This is a great camera. It's got a little flippy thing on the bottom, which is kind of interesting. So you can put it down here so it doesn't tip over. Kind of weird. In order to get into it, you have to flip two different things on both sides. The Leica's only think I had it on one side, and the back comes off. Yeah, this is all brass construction. This is a nice camera. It has a rangefinder imaging, so you look through here, but the image comes out of both of these places, and so it's split screen, and you overlap the two. You overlap those two images to be in focus, and you get the parallax between these two, so you have really critical focusing. You can focus these really nice. Let's see. It is the lenses are aluminum instead of being brass. They're aluminum. The Jupiters I've seen have all been aluminum. This one, I believe, is maybe half and half. I think it's part aluminum, part... No, I think this is all aluminum as well. I think Russia seemed to like lighter lenses to carry them around, so they didn't put in all that brass. I think the body, though, is brass, but the lens itself is yeah, it's aluminum. M39 threads, so you can use it with any Leica setup if you like. I've put this on an adapter and shot it with other cameras. The Jupiter lens is well renowned. Okay, Let me show you the document that I found on these things. It's pretty incredible.
I don't remember where I found these. I'll make them available on a GitHub site. Put a link down below. These are from 1970 and 1971. Catalog, lenses, part one. Photographic, filming, projection, reproduction, magnification. And it has like every lens that Russia made. I mean, all in one place. It's pretty incredible. So if you look down the list, I know people don't speak Russian, but yeah, it's pretty incredible. Here's the Jupiter 8 right here. And let's see here. This is the Industar 61 and the Jupiter 8. So they're sort of in one place here, so we can scroll down to them. But for each lens, it says what it's to be used for, what its characterizations are, and then it gives the actual lens cross-section, so you can see how many elements it is and how big things are. It'll give the mechanical holder and stuff. So let's go down to the, let's see here, where are we? 26, 35. I have to go down a ways here. 48. Where are we now? 60. Okay, we're getting close. All right, here, Jupiter 8. Okay. So this is the construction of a Jupiter 8. So it's really quite fancy. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements, but there's a triplet here and a doublet in the back. So it's really only 3 groups. So that eliminates a lot of internal crosstalk and flare and stuff like that. It'll increase the light throughput of the system with Fresnel reflections and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty fancy, and it would be expensive to build a triplet like this. It looks like maybe there's a planar surface here that makes it a bit cheaper, but still, this would be an expensive lens to manufacture. It looks very nice. And then this is the lens holder, and then it will give a bunch of parameters here: the focal length, aperture, field of view, all of the things, back focal length, everything you need to know. So here's a different version of the Jupiter 8. This one is 52 millimeter, so it's just a tiny bit different. So here's the Industar 61, and there's 2 versions. There's this one, but you can see it's a triplet with a achromat in the back, so 4 elements. But this is not the lens that I have. So if we go down a ways here, this is another version of it. This is a 52 millimeter f2.8. Now this somewhere along the line got changed to a 55 millimeter, but this is the lens that I have. So just a small change was made to make it 55 millimeters instead of 52 millimeters. Not sure why they changed that, but close enough. But yeah, here's the lens. This is exactly the lens that I have. Yeah, so it's a pretty remarkable document, and it is quite extensive. It has all kinds of really cool lenses in here. Some telephotos, some pretty strange designs, some that would look familiar, some that wouldn't. Let's see here. Yeah, this is a pretty typical telephoto lens. Yeah. And then there's another document. And again, this is the catalog for lenses, 1971. This one is part 2. So yeah, part 1 and part 2. And again, all the normal types of lenses. Pretty crazy stuff. There's a Jupiter 11 in here, or 1.1. Yeah. I don't know. Pretty wild stuff. Anyway, that's kind of started out being guy toys and kind of devolved into some lens type stuff. But yeah, I think it's fun, and one of the reasons it's accessible. This stuff is super cheap, so it's nice to get your hands on it.